Good morning. Now, I don't know about you, but my brain has a real tendency to latch on to the bad stuff that I hear about, and not quite as good at holding on to the hope. That's if my brain hears about it at all. Of course, we are wired to focus on the dangers that we hear about rather than all the ways that we are safe and things aren't going wrong. But let's face it, our current algorithms and the way our communication systems are set up between humans, it just means that we often don't even get to hear about all the ways people are trying and sometimes succeeding to make things better. So, what do you do when you want to see something? You go on a bear hunt. We're not scared. You get your knapsack, you put on your shoes, and you go looking for it. Now, I have been invited today to go to a Lush event where they show you all of the bath bombs and like lotiony products that they are about to come out with. And I have never been fancy enough to be invited to one of these events before. I'm very excited. And actually, I wasn't sure whether I was going to feature this very heavily on my channel, but Lush did something really cool yesterday that I would love to chat to you about at the end of the video. And not only am I realising that they are one of the people currently running a business that are actually giving me hope, and if you watch this channel you'll know that being a business and my friend is very hard to do. But I also thought this could be a cool opportunity for us to go on a school trip, a future field trip, if you will, to go and purposely hunt out some stuff that might actually be working in this world and go and look and listen and even maybe taste some samples of the better world that I really have to believe is on the way. Not least just out of respect for all the people who literally are making it their life's work to try and make this world go in a better direction. So think of this as like a hope day trip or a future field trip or something where we go and hunt for the good. I have no idea how today is going to play out, but the one thing I think I do know for certain is that I'm probably going to return with a bath bomb, aren't I? I mean, of all of the external factors, that feels a little inevitable. So I'm going to finish my makeup and let's get going. So I made it. I would have filmed the train ride. But if you've ever tried to get the first cheap train into London, you'll know that basically about 5 people were sitting on my lap and I had everybody's elbows in my face, which is fine. I'll take community where I can get it. But now we're off to Lush Oxford Street to see what they're up to. Sorry, pub toilet lipstick break, very important. So apparently I think I've started to look like a woman who is old enough and whatever enough that I probably have kids. And I don't. But I've started having interactions with women in public where they will like do a little winky wink like joke about children. And I know that they think that we're having like a motherly moment. And like it doesn't offend me and I don't want to make them feel awkward, so I usually just go along with it. So this woman in the coffee shop today was like, "Oh, the kids are back at school, right?" Oh, phew. I was like, "Yeah." And the man behind me was like, "It's like we don't even like them." So I just tapped into my inner improv teen and was like, "You said it, not me," and like walked off doing like a big barrel laugh. Why am I like this? Anyway, now I've been chatting for you too long. I'm totally lost. Good. So after recording this clip, I actually realised I had gone to the wrong location, but no matter. The correct location was only a few streets away. I went to the perfume library that Lush has and it smelled, predictably, incredible. As soon as I got in, I met the author of a book about the history of Lush and its original form, which was called Cosmetics to Go. And I love hearing about like British high street history. I think it really intertwines with the history of working class history and how we interact in public spaces. And I was so keen to read this. She signed a copy for me, which was so nice. And I entered the new products section already fizzing with the energy of human imagination and the weird things humans come up with. I always feel this tension between loving to see new inventions and new colours and being drawn into trend cycles because of that, just because I love the excitement of being presented with something I haven't seen before that came out of somebody else's brain. But I also know that when trend cycles get out of hand, they're literally going to be what's going to kill us. Like, let's be honest, we have to get out of the idea of trend cycles as the default. But reflecting on it as I went round and I got to be really tactile and put my hands in things and smell things and try things, I started to think about how maybe diverting our fascination for trends and difference and pizzazz into something like soap, which we would be using anyway. It's a consumable item rather than clothes or furniture that really we need to be keeping long term. Like, that could be a great way of having our cake and half eating it too. The half-assed human in me knows that cold turkey and Protestant-like denial isn't really how humans successfully adapt. So maybe if we pivot our magpie brains to want new bath bombs and cake colours and lipstick, things that we will use up and replace anyway, rather than new clothes and rugs and shoes and houses, things that really we shouldn't be trying to constantly upgrade and make novel all the time, we might get closer to a more sane way to live while still being allowed to welcome in a little bit of magic. Maybe? Anyway, all that thinking made me very hungry, so I grabbed my pal Grace and we went to Club Mexicana. This is my favourite restaurant in London, I want to say. I discovered it because I was on a Radio 4 show about food, and in that show I got to meet the owner and she was bloody incredible. The idea of this Mexican inspired street food restaurant is that it happens to be vegan, like it's kind of secretly vegan. They just want to make really tasty food, and it's kind of aimed at people who just want to eat nice food and aren't specifically aware that they're walking into a completely vegan restaurant until they've already tasted some of the goodness. They have 3 restaurants now. This one's on Carnaby Street in the smack bang in the middle of Soho in Kingly Court. And when I say they make cheese fondue dripping hot sauce, which will make letting go of the cheese sauce that is made out of mouldy old cow milk incredibly easy. Then it was time to go and collect my goodies and be on my way. Okay, life-changing time at the perfume library with Lush. And now I'm having a little rush because I heard a rumour, and when I say rumour I say my friend Rosianna informed me that apparently Rachel Zelga is starring in Evita right now, and she sings from a balcony on Argyle Street at 4 p.m. So I'm running to see if that rumour is true, because I'm nothing if not an investigative journalist. That is where I get my glasses from. So if anybody's wondering, that's where I get it. Right there. Personality is not included, but I'm sure you can ask for it for extra. Oh my god, loads of other people have heard the rumour. I'm not alone. This could be real. Okay, so we saw her elbow. But what a nice elbow it was. And I also got to watch some of it through this woman's screen, so that was fun. Context you need to know for that is Evita political musical. There's a part in the play where Evita goes out onto a huge balcony and addresses the people with a capital P. And this performance of Evita, they were very clever, and they were like, why don't we literally send her out onto a balcony, onto the street, and film it for the indoor audience, but then we'll have an actual audience of people watching her sing just like she's supposed to in the real adaptation. So that's pretty cool, and it's free. Now, last stop on the Hope tour, and then we'll go home. Accidental side quest. I tripped and fell into a bookshop, okay? But it's fine because I bought a book that was incredibly hopeful called The Art of Gathering, about how to gather better. So now we're on the way to the Science Museum. As somebody who took an English degree and then went into non-fiction publishing for a long time, where I had to read a lot of science books, I realised that I had a bit of a misunderstanding about the role of literature versus science. Now, I thought literature was where you go to find hope, but I was wrong. Literature is where you go to deal with despair. Science is where you go to find hope, I think. So So we're off to the Science Museum. Change of plan. I wanted to go to an exhibition at the Science Museum called The Future of Food. And the Science Museum shuts at 6. However, that exhibition in particular, I found out, shuts at 5. And I arrived there at 30 seconds past 5. We love an accurate ticket man. He was not having it. He was not going to let me in, and that is his prerogative. Like, that is his right. I'm glad that he's doing his job well. But instead, I'm going to go to the National History Museum because I know there's a climate change exhibition on there about fixing the broken planet, and that sounds not as fun as the Future of Food exhibition, but I will take it. Let's go. So immediately when I walked into the exhibition, the big sign just said, "This is an emergency. All hands on deck." So immediately I was like, thank goodness this isn't one of those we've got to help the environment, save a polar bear kind of exhibits. It did feel like much more like they knew it was an emergency, as much as I've been learning that it's an emergency. And then I was confronted with this bloody massive bison. And did you know they've actually started reintroducing bison into UK woodlands? They've been doing it since 2022. They're trying to see whether they can engineer the forest to store more carbon. And bison are a really natural way of doing that. They clear paths, they do loads of grazing, they fertilise the soil. So the scientists from Natural History Museum are using some kind of fancy DNA analysis to measure what they're doing to the soil and how much it's helping. But it seems so far that it is. What the hell? Another cool thing that I learned was that, like, obviously we need a lot more clean power if we're going to survive on this planet. And clean power means we need batteries, and batteries need lithium. And quite simply, there is literally nowhere near enough globally for the UK to switch cars to electric. Like, if we were going to do that, we would literally have to use 75% of the world's annual lithium supply just to switch the British cars. Like, that's not happening. So the Natural History Museum are working on a way to extract lithium from British granite to make it possible to switch from petrol. And then also, obviously, we'd be getting it from Britain, and we wouldn't need to transport lithium from other far-flung parts of the world. If you can, you should go and see this exhibition for yourself, because there were so many wild things in it. One of them is that this is a massive chunk of whale earwax, and they are using it to determine how much plastic is in the ocean and how long it's been there for. Lots of stuff about modifying wheat so it survives in hotter climates. Yes, please. And another thing I was impressed by was how blatant they were and how many signs there were about how meat is, like, not a future plan for any of us to eat. Like, it's not going to be possible for us to consume as much meat as we do in the future. And it was nice not only reading those things for myself, but also watching loads of other strangers read those things in plain sight as well, because I think the government isn't as upfront as it should be about the realities of that. And they even included some hard truths about the pet impact on the climate and how feeding your pets chicken and fish and insects is much better than beef or lamb. Like, we literally can't keep feeding pets the way we have been. And with the announcement that the museum was closing, it was time for me to be on my merry way. Goodbye, Darwin. I am back off to the Midlands on my train. And of course, I dug into that very hopeful book on my way home. So I was right. I got a bath bomb and a considerable amount of other things. So why don't I show you what I got while we chat a little bit about where I found hope yesterday. So there was obviously loads of really exciting stuff at the event. They had a whole snow fairy room, and also the Scooby-Doo stuff smelled amazing, but I was most impressed by their co-create projects. At the moment they are making Diwali, Hanukkah and Dia de Muertos, which have been specifically designed by people from those communities who celebrate those occasions, and they're being fairly compensated, paid very well. They're getting final sign off on everything, and also, like, a lot of the stories are quite personal stories and personal sense from their own lives and their own experiences, which I thought was really sweet. It might seem frivolous, but if you think about it, I personally am so used to having so much Christmas stuff everywhere. It seems only fair that everyone gets to have a sparkly bath themed after a celebration that actually means something to them. A small wrong righted in glitter, I guess. Lush occasionally have made some mistakes, and I've, like, watched those carefully and watched them apologise and not do it again. So they're definitely one of the high street brands that I'm, like, more hopeful about than most. For example, like, don't even talk to me about Boots, and who has owned Boots up until, like, 2020? Philip Green. one of the worst men on the planet, and then now it's owned by some US equity firm that seems to be not really somebody I want to give my money to. So when it comes like what is actually available on the British High Street, they give me a lot of hope. And what I wanted to talk to you about at the beginning of the video, and I mentioned, was that the day before I went to London, they closed all of their online sales and all of their shops, including their factories, and they put "Stop Starving Gaza" signs, "We are closing solidarity," over all of their shops and also on their website. And in their statement they said, whilst Lush is losing a day of takings, this also means that the UK government is losing a day of taxable contributions from Lush and our customers. I actually think that's really big balls energy, and definitely like putting your money where your mouth is, quite literally. They also paid all of their employees for that day as well, so it probably cost them a lot to do. But I've honestly never seen something on the British High Street like that that's so not performative, that's like, we're literally going to deprive you of what is probably quite a lot of tax for the government for that day. Lush is very huge, and I just thought I wanted to mention that because I didn't see that much like news coverage of it, and Lush don't have their own social channels. So with all of the murky stuff I talk about companies doing on the internet, I think that it would be remiss of me not to find quite a lot of hope in that. They also have tried the sustainable makeup again, and it actually was quite good. I have tried it before in the past and it hasn't been great, and I was very upfront with them about that when they were like, have you tried our makeup before? And I was like, yes, and I didn't like it, I'm sorry. But this stuff is good, and they've given me some samples. I'm gonna keep working with it, and God knows that absolutely nobody else is even trying when it comes to high street shops providing makeup that might make sense on a burning planet. So reformulating all of that made me incredibly hopeful as well. As you know, I'm somebody who geeks out about makeup but wants to consume it in a more responsible way. I've shared some of the little geeky things I learned in the museum, but honestly I found a lot of hope in that they even had an exhibition on it, and it was so upfront about what an emergency we're experiencing. And also I didn't know like how much funding from the museum and the gift shop and all of that stuff, that you can feel kind of skeptical about how much of that funding is actually going into real-time research that the government isn't funding to try and solve these issues. I also noticed that, like, I don't know if this was intentional, but there was an incredible amount of female experts listed on all of the plaques, and they also showed pictures of them, which I don't know, I feel like for me that really impacted me, because I was like also realising that a lot of these women that are making these incredible discoveries and working incredibly hard to make things better are like my age or only a little bit older. Like, it's so good to have that work visible, and that you can kind of picture the people who are doing it, that they're real people with real expertise. So like, a round of applause to the Natural History Museum. Love that. And also the fact that bison are back, because I read years and years ago in a book called Feral by George Monbiot about how we need more like big predators back in the UK, and how we've like artificially excluded them from the island, and that's like not good for wildlife. And in that book it felt like really controversial and like a far off dream, and somehow I looked the other way and it's actually started happening. So that's also objectively very cool. Although I shan't be approaching the bison. That would be scary. I would love for them to be over there. Where are they? I think they're in Kent. That's fine. Thank you for joining me on my future field trip, my little excursion of hope hunting. If you like this video, maybe we can make it a series. Let me know if you would enjoy that. And I'd also love to hear in the comments where you've been finding hope recently. Shout out the experts, shout out the people who are doing stuff, because we love to see it. It keeps me in some ways sane and motivated to send my MP yet another email. Thank you so much for watching, and a huge thank you to the Gumption Club who make these videos possible. It's the reason we didn't have to stop and do a sponsor, and that I can like impartially review stuff like Lush products without worrying about being sponsored. That's all because of them. So if you would like to join, I have like over 140 podcasts that are just for patrons, of me talking about life and books that I'm reading and films that I'm watching and moral conundrums that I'm going through. Plus we have a very, very active Discord of like-minded people who are also trying to find joy and glitter, of which I apparently have a lot on my hands. Glitter and hope and ways forward in this world. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave links below on how to join the Gumption Club. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this, frankly, panicky but positive panicky channel. I'll see you on my next one. Frogs Nog out.